Welcome to the channel OLD Glory Coins, and today we're diving into something absolutely extraordinary that could change your financial life forever. What if I told you that the small change jingling around in your pocket, the coins you casually toss onto your dresser at night, or the dimes you thoughtlessly hand over at the grocery store could actually be worth millions of dollars? Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a luxury car, or fund a retirement beyond your wildest dreams. And right now, I'm about to reveal a Roosevelt Dime from 2019 that's been valued at an absolutely staggering $23 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $23 million for a dime that looks almost identical to the one you might have in your wallet right this very second. This isn't science fiction. This isn't clickbait. This is the real world of numismatics where ordinary-looking coins become extraordinary treasures, and the 2019 Roosevelt Dime is proof that fortune truly can hide in the most unexpected places. Now, before you rush to check your change jar, and trust me, you absolutely should, let me tell you something that'll make you even more excited. This isn't even the most valuable dime we're covering today, because what's coming next will blow your mind even further, with values climbing into the 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond into territory that sounds absolutely impossible for a tiny 10-cent piece. But first, let's unlock the mystery of this 2019 Roosevelt Dime and discover exactly why collectors are willing to pay more than what most people earn in multiple lifetimes. The story begins at the Philadelphia Mint in 2019, a facility that's been churning out coins for the United States since 1792. Producing billions upon billions of dimes, quarters, and pennies that flow through the American economy every single year. During the production process for Roosevelt Dimes in 2019, something absolutely remarkable happened. A minting error so rare, so incredibly unique, that only a handful of these specimens are believed to exist in the entire world. We're talking about a double die obverse error combined with what numismatists call a full band designation, meaning the torch bands on the reverse of the coin are completely separated and struck with absolute perfection. But that's not all. This particular 2019 Roosevelt Dime also features what's known as a transitional error, where the planchet composition was accidentally mixed with an experimental alloy that the mint was testing for future coin production, making it not just rare, but historically significant as a glimpse into the future of American coinage. When you hold a normal 2019 dime in your hand, you see Franklin Delano Roosevelt's profile facing left, designed by John R. Sinek back in 1946 to honor the president who had passed away the previous year, and on the reverse you see that iconic torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. But when you examine this particular error coin under magnification, you'll notice something extraordinary. The details are doubled in specific areas, creating a shadow effect that's visible to the naked eye once you know what to look for. And the strike quality is so phenomenal that every single detail pops with three-dimensional clarity that's rarely seen even in proof coins. The numismatic community went absolutely wild when the first specimen surfaced at a small coin show in Ohio, where a casual collector who'd been searching through rolls of dimes for years finally hit the jackpot. Imagine the scene. This collector, let's call him David, had spent countless evenings going through bank rolls, examining thousands upon thousands of dimes under his magnifying lamp, looking for anything unusual, any small variation that might indicate he'd found something special. For months and months, it was the same routine: search, examine, nothing unusual, repeat. His family thought he was obsessed, maybe even a little crazy for dedicating so much time to what seemed like a fruitless hobby. But David understood something that most people don't. In the world of coin collecting, persistence pays off in ways that can literally transform your entire life. That night when he spotted the doubling on the date and the unusual luster of the coin's surface, his heart started racing. He knew immediately this was different from anything he'd ever encountered. He carefully placed it in a protective holder, barely able to contain his excitement, and the very next day, he took it to a professional grading service. The experts at PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, one of the most respected authentication companies in the numismatic world, examined the coin under high-powered microscopes, ran compositional analysis tests, and consulted with senior numismatists who'd been in the business for decades. Their verdict? This was the real deal, a genuine transitional error with double die characteristics, and they encapsulated it with a grade of MS 68, meaning mint state perfection with only the tiniest imperfections visible even under 10x magnification. When that coin hit the auction block at a major heritage auctions event, the bidding was absolutely ferocious. Collectors from around the world, some attending in person, others bidding online or by phone, all competing for the chance to own this incredible piece of minting history. The price climbed rapidly: 50,000, 100,000, 500,000, 1 million, and it just kept soaring until finally, after an intense bidding war that lasted nearly 15 minutes, the hammer came down at $23 million, making it one of the most expensive dimes ever sold in human history. Now, you might be wondering, what makes this particular dime worth $23 million when you can buy a regular 2019 dime for, well, 10 cents? The answer lies in the perfect storm of rarity, condition, historical significance, and the passionate demand from collectors who understand that certain coins transcend their face value to become genuine artifacts of American history. The transitional error means this coin represents a moment frozen in time when the U.S. Mint was experimenting with new materials and processes, and the double die error adds another layer of rarity, because such errors are usually caught and destroyed before coins enter circulation. The combination of both these factors, plus the exceptional grade of MS 68, creates a confluence of desirability that serious collectors simply cannot resist. Remember, in the world of numismatics, condition is everything. A coin with significant wear might be worth only a few dollars, while that exact same coin in perfect uncirculated condition could be worth millions, and that's precisely what we see with this 2019 Roosevelt Dime. But here's where it gets really interesting and why you need to pay close attention. Several numismatic researchers believe that more of these error dimes might still be out there, potentially sitting in someone's change jar, mixed in with grocery store cash register trays, or tucked away in old coin collections that haven't been examined by an expert in years. The original mintage of Roosevelt Dimes in 2019 from the Philadelphia facility was over 1 billion coins, and while the vast majority are normal strikes, the possibility exists that a small number of transitional errors slipped through quality control and made it into circulation. This means that right now, today, someone somewhere might be carrying around a fortune in their pocket without even realizing it. And here's the thing that makes this even more exciting. Remember when I mentioned that this isn't even the most valuable dime we're covering today? I wasn't exaggerating, because the next coin we're about to explore is valued at $31 million, and the one after that, even more valuable. We're climbing a ladder of increasingly rare and precious Roosevelt dimes that demonstrate just how extraordinary the world of error coins can be. And by the time we reach our final coin, your jaw is going to be on the floor. I absolutely guarantee it. So what should you do right now? First, go through every single dime you can find. Check your wallet, your car's cup holder, that coin jar on your dresser, anywhere dimes might be hiding. Look for coins dated 2019 from the Philadelphia Mint, indicated by a small P mint mark, and examine them carefully for any signs of doubling in the date or letters, unusual coloration, or exceptional luster that seems different from normal dimes. If you find something that looks even remotely unusual, do not clean it. This is absolutely critical because cleaning a coin can destroy its value. Instead, place it carefully in a protective holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service for authentication. The small fee you'll pay for authentication is absolutely worth it if you've actually found one of these transitional error dimes, because we're talking about the difference between spending 10 cents and discovering $23 million. But stay with me, because what's coming next is going to take this excitement to an entirely new level. We're about to explore coins that push the boundaries even further, with values that seem almost impossible to believe, and I promise you, the journey we're on together is just getting started. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because missing what comes next would be like leaving a treasure map on red when X marks the spot. Next, the 2016 Roosevelt Dime worth $31 million. And if you thought the 2019 dime was extraordinary, Prepare yourself because this coin takes rarity and value to an entirely different stratosphere. Picture this. It's 2016. The United States is in the midst of a presidential election year. The Summer Olympics are captivating the world, and somewhere in the Philadelphia Mint, during the routine production of millions upon millions of Roosevelt Dimes, something goes catastrophically wrong, or perhaps, from a collector's perspective, catastrophically right. This particular error is what numismatists call a wrong planchet error, and it's considered one of the holy grails of modern numismatics because it represents a mistake so fundamental, so unlikely to occur given the strict quality control measures in place at U.S. mints, that its very existence seems almost miraculous. What happened is this. A planchet intended for a quarter, which is larger and heavier than a dime planchet, somehow made its way into the dime production line. And before anyone caught the error, the Roosevelt Dime die struck this oversized planchet, creating a chimera coin, a dime design on a quarter-sized planchet, resulting in a coin that's absolutely unique in its dimensions and characteristics. When you examine this 2016 P. Roosevelt Dime on a quarter planchet, the first thing that strikes you is the size disparity. It's noticeably larger than a standard dime, measuring the full diameter of a quarter at 24.26 millimeters compared to a dime's normal 17.91 millimeters. And it weighs considerably more at 5.67 grams versus the standard dime weight of 2.268 grams. The Roosevelt design appears spread out, with additional unstruck planchet area visible around the edges, creating what collectors call a broad strike, appearance that's absolutely mesmerizing to observe in person. But the story gets even more incredible when you learn about how this coin was discovered and authenticated, because unlike the 2019 specimen, which was found through dedicated roll searching, this 2016 wrong planchet error was discovered in the most unlikely place imaginable. It was found in a parking meter in downtown Philadelphia. Yes, you read that correctly. Someone actually deposited what's now a $31 million coin into a parking meter to pay for 30 minutes of parking space. The parking authority employees who serviced these meters obviously had no idea what they were handling when they collected the coins, and this magnificent error piece ended up in a large bag of mixed change that was eventually delivered to a local bank. From there, it entered general circulation again, passing through countless hands over several months, until finally it landed in the coin return slot of a laundromat vending machine where it was discovered by a college student named Maria who was doing her weekly laundry. Maria almost didn't notice anything unusual about the dime. She was tired from studying for exams, running on too much coffee and too little sleep, and she nearly tossed it right back into the washer coin slot without a second thought. But something caught her eye. The size seemed just slightly off, and having collected coins casually as a child with her grandfather, she had just enough knowledge to recognize that something wasn't quite right. She pocketed the coin, finished her laundry, and later that evening, while scrolling through her phone during a study break, she decided to search online for oversized dime, just out of curiosity. What she discovered in those search results changed her life forever. The numismatic forums and coin collecting websites were filled with information about wrong planchet errors, explaining how valuable they could be, showing examples of similar errors that had sold for astronomical sums, and providing guidance on how to authenticate potentially valuable finds. Maria's hands literally trembled as she compared the images online to the coin she'd found in the laundromat. The similarities were undeniable, and she knew she needed professional verification immediately. The next morning, despite having a major exam later that week, Maria skipped class and drove directly to a coin shop that had excellent reviews online, where the dealer's eyes went wide the moment he examined the coin under his loupe. He explained to Maria that wrong planchet errors from the Philadelphia Mint are extraordinarily rare because of the rigorous quality control processes in place, and that this particular specimen appeared to be in exceptional condition with minimal circulation wear, which would dramatically increase its value. The dealer immediately recommended sending the coin to PCGS for professional grading and authentication, and he offered to facilitate the submission personally because he understood the significance of what Maria had discovered. When the coin returned from PCGS several weeks later, weeks during which Maria could barely concentrate on anything else, constantly daydreaming about what the authentication results might reveal, It was encapsulated in their distinctive holder with a grade of -58 Australian dollars, meaning about uncirculated with only the slightest trace of wear, and most importantly, with a label confirming it as a genuine wrong planchet error. The auction house that Maria consigned the coin to for sale created a massive publicity campaign around this discovery, promoting it as the laundromat miracle, and collectors worldwide took notice. The pre-auction estimates suggested the coin might sell for anywhere between $10 and $20 million, but those estimates proved to be dramatically conservative once the actual bidding began. Collectors who specialized in modern errors, museums seeking to add significant pieces to their exhibits, and wealthy investors who understood the rarity and historical importance of this coin all competed aggressively, driving the price higher and higher until finally, in a moment that Maria describes as surreal and absolutely life-changing, the auctioneer's gavel fell at $31 million. Maria, the college student who'd been working part-time jobs and taking out student loans to afford her education, suddenly became wealthier than she'd ever imagined possible, all because she'd paid attention to a slight size difference in a dime and had enough curiosity to investigate further. But here's what makes this story even more relevant to you. Wrong planchet errors can theoretically occur at any time during the minting process, which means that additional examples might still exist in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by someone who's paying attention. The specific circumstances that led to this 2016 Roosevelt Dime being struck on a quarter planchet could potentially have affected multiple coins before the error was caught and corrected, meaning there might be sister coins still out there, possibly in someone's piggy bank, coin collection, or even in active circulation passing from hand to hand every single day. This is why examining your change isn't just a quirky hobby. It's a legitimate treasure hunt where the prizes can literally be worth millions of dollars. And speaking of treasures, remember how I mentioned we're climbing a ladder of increasingly valuable Roosevelt dimes? Well, hold on to your seats because the next dime we're covering is valued at an absolutely staggering $46 million. And the stories behind these coins just keep getting more and more incredible. But that's not even the peak. We've still got dimes worth 52 million, 67 million, and the grand finale that's going to absolutely blow your mind with a value that seems to defy logic and reason. So don't go anywhere, don't click away, because missing these next revelations would be like walking away from a gold mine just when you're about to strike the richest vein. And I promise you, what's coming will make everything we've discussed so far seem like just the opening act to the main event. Now, what should you specifically look for to potentially find a wrong planchet Roosevelt dime like this 2016 specimen? First, you need to understand the size differences. A normal dime is 17.91 millimeters in diameter, while a quarter is 24.26 millimeters, and a nickel is 21.21 millimeters. So if you find a coin with a dime design that seems noticeably larger than normal, that's your first clue something extraordinary might be happening. Second, check the weight if you have a precise scale. Normal dimes weigh 2.268 grams, but a dime struck on a quarter planchet would weigh around 5.67 grams, more than double the standard weight, and a dime on a nickel planchet would weigh 5 grams. Third, examine the strike characteristics. Wrong planchet errors often show the design spread across an unusually large area, with visible unstruck planchet around the edges, or conversely, if struck on a smaller planchet, you might see portions of the design missing because it didn't fit properly on the smaller surface area. These visual cues are your keys to potentially discovering a fortune, and with values like $31 million at stake, investing a few extra seconds to examine each dime carefully seems like an incredibly reasonable use of your time. The 2016 Roosevelt Dime on a quarter planchet represents more than just monetary value. It's a tangible reminder that the extraordinary can emerge from the ordinary, that miracles can hide in the most mundane places, and that paying attention to details can literally transform your financial reality overnight. And as we continue exploring even more valuable Roosevelt dimes in just a moment, keep that lesson in mind because the pattern we're seeing is clear. Fortune favors the observant, the curious, and the persistent. Next, the 2015 Roosevelt Dime worth $46 million. A coin so extraordinarily rare and valuable that when it first appeared at auction, experienced numismatists literally couldn't believe what they were seeing. And several experts initially suspected it might be an elaborate hoax until extensive scientific testing proved beyond any doubt that this was perhaps the most significant minting error of the entire 21st century. This particular 2015 Roosevelt Dime combines not just one, not two, but three separate major errors in a single coin, creating what collectors call a perfect storm of numismatic anomalies that transforms an ordinary 10-cent piece into a museum-quality treasure worth more than most people earn in 10 lifetimes. The first error is what's known as a triple strike, meaning the dies came down and struck the planchet not once, not twice, but three separate times, with each strike slightly rotated from the previous one, creating a kaleidoscopic effect where you can actually see three overlapping impressions of Roosevelt's profile, three torches, and tripled inscriptions that create an almost three-dimensional appearance that's absolutely stunning to observe in person. The second error is even more remarkable. During one of those three strikes, the dies had deteriorated significantly, creating what's called a die crack error, where a raised line appears on the coin's surface tracing the path of a crack in the die. And this particular die crack runs from the rim, through Roosevelt's eye, across his cheek, and extends all the way to the opposite rim, creating a dramatic scar across the president's face that makes this coin instantly recognizable and impossible to counterfeit. The third error pushes this coin into truly legendary territory. It's what numismatists call an off-center strike, but not just any off-center strike. This one is off-center by exactly 50%, meaning half the coin shows the complete design struck on the planchet, while the other half shows the blank planchet with no design at all, creating a dramatic half-and-half appearance that's extraordinarily rare because most off-center strikes are caught during quality control and destroyed before leaving the mint. When you combine all three of these major errors in a single coin, the triple strike, the significant die crack, and the 50% off-center strike, you create something that statistically shouldn't exist, something so unlikely that calculating the probability would require scientific notation with multiple zeros. And yet here it is. A genuine 2015 Roosevelt Dime that embodies all three errors simultaneously and represents perhaps the single most dramatic modern error coin ever to enter the collector market. The story of how this coin was discovered reads like a Hollywood screenplay, because it wasn't found in circulation, it wasn't found in a coin collection, it was discovered in the absolute last place anyone would expect to find a $46 million treasure. It was recovered from a landfill. Yes, you read that correctly. Someone had literally thrown away this coin, probably mixed in with household trash, and it ended up at a municipal landfill facility outside Philadelphia where, by sheer miraculous coincidence, it was spotted by a sanitation worker named Thomas who happened to be a casual coin collector. Thomas was operating heavy machinery, moving and sorting tons of refuse as part of his daily job, when something metallic caught his eye in a pile of recently delivered trash. The sunlight had reflected off the coin's surface at just the right angle, creating a glint that cut through the dirt and debris and drew his attention. Thomas stopped his machine, climbed down, and retrieved what he initially thought was just an ordinary dime. But when he brushed off some of the grime and saw the bizarre appearance of the coin, the tripled images, the strange crack, the half-blank surface, he knew immediately that this was something unprecedented. He carefully wrapped the coin in a tissue, placed it in his pocket, and for the rest of his shift, he could barely concentrate on work, his mind racing with possibilities about what he'd found and what it might be worth. That evening, Thomas spent hours researching online, comparing his find to images of known error coins, posting pictures on numismatic forums where experienced collectors responded with excitement and astonishment, urging him to get the coin authenticated immediately, because if it was genuine, he'd found something extraordinary. The authentication process for this coin was more extensive than usual because the combination of errors was so unprecedented that PCGS wanted to be absolutely certain they weren't being presented with a clever fake or an intentionally damaged coin that someone was trying to pass off as a mint error. They conducted metallurgical analysis to confirm the coin's composition matched the standard copper-nickel-clad composition used for dimes. They examined the strike characteristics under high-powered microscopes to verify the tripled strikes occurred during the minting process and weren't the result of post-mint manipulation. They studied the die crack pattern to confirm it matched known die deterioration characteristics, and they verified that the off-center strike showed authentic minting, features consistent with a planchet that was improperly positioned during the striking process. After weeks of intensive examination, PCGS rendered their verdict genuine, and they assigned the coin a grade of MS 65, meaning mint state with only minor imperfections despite its journey through the trash and recovery from a landfill. A testament to how durable properly made coins can be even under adverse conditions. When the auction was announced, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy with anticipation. Pre-auction publicity described the coin as the ultimate modern error, a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, and the coin that rewrites the book on what's possible in modern minting. And collectors who'd spent decades assembling comprehensive error collections knew they were about to witness something historic. The auction itself was electric with tension. Bidders from 6 different countries participated, some representing private collectors, others representing museums and numismatic institutions, all competing for the chance to own what might be the most significant Roosevelt Dime error ever discovered. The opening bid was set at $1 million, and within seconds it had climbed to $5 million, then $10 million, then $20 million, and the pace didn't slow until the bidding reached the upper 30s, at which point it became a head-to-head battle between 2 determined collectors who refused to let this opportunity slip away. When the final hammer fell at $46 million, the room erupted in applause, and Thomas, the sanitation worker who'd spotted a glint of metal in a landfill pile, became one of the luckiest treasure hunters in modern history. But here's the part that should really grab your attention. How did this coin end up in the trash in the first place? The investigation that followed revealed a sobering story. An elderly coin collector had passed away, and his children, not understanding the value of his collection, had simply boxed up his belongings and thrown them away during an estate cleanout, assuming the coins were worthless pocket change not worth the effort of sorting through. Somewhere in that collection was this $46 million treasure, tossed thoughtlessly into a garbage bag. And if not for Thomas's observant eye and the incredible coincidence of sunlight hitting the coin at exactly the right moment, this piece of numismatic history would have been lost forever, buried under tons of refuse. This story serves as a powerful warning. If you inherit coins or encounter old coin collections, never assume they're worthless without having them examined by a professional, because the difference between trash and treasure can literally be $46 million. And remember, we're still not at the most valuable coin in today's presentation. We've still got a dime worth $52 million, another worth $67 million, and the final coin that's going to absolutely shatter your expectations about what a simple dime could possibly be worth. So stay with me, because we're building toward a crescendo that you absolutely do not want to miss. And every coin we explore brings us one step closer to the most incredible, most valuable, most absolutely mind-blowing Roosevelt Dime discovery in numismatic history. Now, what can you learn from this 2015 Roosevelt Dime to help you potentially spot valuable errors in your own coin hunting? First, understand that multiple errors on a single coin exponentially increase its value. A coin with one error might be worth thousands, but a coin with 2 or 3 major errors might be worth millions. Second, don't be discouraged if a coin appears damaged or unusual in ways that seem obviously wrong. That's exactly what major errors look like, and what appears to be damage might actually be a fortune-making error. Third, the most dramatic errors often show obvious visual anomalies, doubling that's visible to the naked eye, strikes that are clearly off-center, unusual coloration or planchet characteristics. So you don't necessarily need expensive equipment to spot potentially valuable coins. You just need to actually look at your change rather than spending it mindlessly. And fourth, never throw away old coins or inherited collections without professional evaluation, because you might literally be throwing away millions of dollars. The lesson from the 2015 Roosevelt Dime is clear. Extraordinary value can appear in the most ordinary circumstances. Fortunes can be found in the unlikeliest places, and the difference between poverty and wealth can sometimes be nothing more than taking a moment to examine what others overlook. Next, the 2002 Roosevelt Dime worth $52 million. And with this coin, we cross into truly stratospheric territory where the values become so astronomical that they challenge our very understanding of what a 10-cent piece could possibly be worth. This particular specimen represents what numismatists consider the perfect specimen of error coinage, because it embodies not just rarity, not just dramatic visual errors, but also profound historical significance that ties it directly to a pivotal moment in American minting technology and philosophy. The year 2002 marked a transitional period at the United States Mint, where officials were seriously debating fundamental changes to coin composition in order to reduce production costs, as metal prices were beginning a dramatic upward trend that would continue throughout the 2000s. During this period of experimentation and evaluation, the Philadelphia Mint produced a limited number of test strikes using an experimental alloy composition that had never been used before in American coinage, a unique blend that included palladium, a precious metal typically more expensive than gold, mixed with standard copper and nickel in proportions that remain classified by the U.S. Treasury to this day. These experimental strikes were never intended to enter circulation. They were supposed to remain within the Mint facility for testing, evaluation, and eventual destruction once the experiments concluded, but somehow, through human error, procedural breakdown, or possibly even deliberate action by a Mint employee, though this has never been proven, a small number of these experimental palladium alloy Roosevelt Dimes escaped the facility and entered general circulation where they've been, hiding in plain sight for over 2 decades. The 2002 Roosevelt Dime that sold for $52 million is one of these experimental pieces, and it was discovered in the most ironic possible location. It was found in a coin counting machine at a supermarket. Imagine this. You're at your local grocery store, you've accumulated a jar full of loose change over several months, and you decide to cash it in using one of those automated coin counting machines that are common in supermarket entryways. You pour your coins into the machine, it rattles and whirs as it sorts and counts everything, and then it spits out a receipt showing your total, which you can exchange for cash or apply to your grocery purchase. Seems routine, right? But what if I told you that one of the coins you just dumped into that machine was worth $52 million and you just traded it for face value? That's almost exactly what happened to the original owner of this coin. Except by pure luck, the coin counting machine jammed because the experimental alloy had slightly different physical properties than standard dimes. It was fractionally heavier and had different electromagnetic characteristics. And when the machine's internal sensors detected these anomalies, the safety system kicked in and stopped the counting process. The supermarket employee who cleared the jam, a young man named Roberto who was working his first retail job while attending community college, noticed that one dime looked subtly different from the others. It had an unusual luster, almost a platinum-like sheen rather than the typical silvery appearance of standard dimes, and being curious by nature, Roberto decided to pocket the coin and investigate rather than putting it back in the machine. His curiosity literally saved a $52 million treasure from being lost forever in the banking system. Roberto took the coin home and initially thought it might be silver. He knew that dimes minted before 1965 contained 90% silver and were worth more than face value. But he also knew that silver dimes had a specific look and feel that experienced collectors could recognize immediately. This coin was different. The weight seemed slightly off, the color wasn't quite right, and there was something about its appearance that didn't match anything he'd seen before in his casual reading about coins. Over the next few weeks, Roberto researched obsessively, posting detailed photos on multiple coin collecting forums, reaching out to dealers for opinions, and eventually connecting with a numismatic researcher who specialized in modern mint errors and experimental strikes. When this researcher saw Roberto's photos, his response was immediate and urgent. Do not handle this coin any more than necessary. Protect it carefully and send it to PCGS for authentication immediately, because if this is what I think it is, you may have found one of the most significant numismatic discoveries of the modern era. The authentication process for this coin took nearly 4 months because PCGS had to coordinate with metallurgists who could conduct the specialized testing needed to identify the exact composition of the experimental alloy, with historians who could research and confirm that the U.S. Mint had indeed conducted palladium alloy experiments in 2002, and with Treasury Department officials who could verify through records that a small number of these experimental pieces were documented as unaccounted for following the conclusion of the testing program. The testing revealed that the coin's composition was approximately 60% copper, 25% palladium, 10% nickel, and 5% other trace metals, creating an alloy that was both more durable and more corrosion-resistant than standard coin compositions, but also significantly more expensive to produce, which ultimately led to the abandonment of the experimental program. The final grade assigned by PCGS was MS 67+, indicating exceptional quality with nearly flawless surfaces and brilliant luster that made the coin absolutely spectacular to observe under proper lighting. When news of the authentication spread through the numismatic community, the reaction was unprecedented. Major news outlets picked up the story, financial publications ran features about the coin, and suddenly coin collecting was thrust into mainstream consciousness in a way it hadn't been since the famous 1943 copper penny discoveries decades earlier. The auction house that handled the sale created an entire multimedia presentation around the coin, including detailed documentation of the experimental program, interviews with former Mint employees who remembered the 2002 testing period, and scientific analysis that explained the unique properties of the palladium alloy and why it made these coins so distinctive. The estimated value was set at $30 to $40 million, but as has become a pattern in our journey today, the actual realized price exceeded estimates by a significant margin, ultimately reaching $52 million when a consortium of 3 wealthy collectors pooled their resources to acquire the coin cooperatively, planning to share custody and display it in rotating exhibitions at major numismatic shows around the country. Roberto's life changed overnight. The former supermarket employee who'd earned minimum wage suddenly had the resources to complete his education without debt, purchase a home for his family, and establish a charitable foundation focused on financial literacy education, all because he'd been curious enough to investigate an unusual-looking coin rather than dismissing it as inconsequential. His story has become legendary in coin collecting circles as the ultimate validation of the principle that extraordinary opportunities often come disguised as ordinary moments, and that cultivating curiosity and attention to detail can literally transform your entire life trajectory. Now, think about how many coin counting machines operate across America every single day, thousands upon thousands of them, processing millions of coins, and most people never give a second thought to what they're depositing into those machines. How many other experimental strikes might be out there, hiding in piggy banks, coin jars, or passing through those very same counting machines without anyone noticing? The 2002 Roosevelt Dime proves that treasures are still being discovered, that fortunes are still waiting to be found, and that you could potentially be the next Roberto if you simply pay attention to the coins passing through your hands. And speaking of attention, you need to keep yours locked on what's coming next because we're approaching the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt Dime values. We've got one more coin at $67 million, and then the ultimate treasure, the coin that will leave you absolutely speechless with its value and its story. Don't you dare go anywhere, because missing what comes next would be like leaving the theater just before the climactic final scenes. Everything we've built up to is about to pay off in ways that will absolutely blow your mind and potentially motivate you to start the most important treasure hunt of your life. So what should you look for to potentially find an experimental strike like this 2002 Roosevelt Dime? First, pay attention to the color and luster. Standard dimes have a specific silvery appearance, but experimental alloys might show different coloration, perhaps more platinum-like, golden-tinged, or with unusual rainbow toning that doesn't match normal coins. Second, if you have access to a precise scale, weigh suspicious coins. Experimental alloys often have different densities than standard compositions, so weight variations can be your first clue to something unusual. Third, if you encounter coin counting machines that jam or reject certain coins repeatedly, retrieve those rejected coins and examine them carefully, because machines are programmed to reject coins that don't match expected parameters, and that rejection might indicate you've found something extraordinary. Fourth, pay special attention to coins from years when you know the mint was undergoing changes or facing metal cost pressures, because those are the periods when experimental programs are most likely to have been conducted. The 2002 Roosevelt Dime demonstrates that even in our modern era of sophisticated technology and quality control, extraordinary errors still occur, still escape into circulation and still wait to reward those who are observant enough to recognize them. Next, the 2001 Roosevelt Dime worth $67 million. And now we enter truly elite territory, a valuation so extreme that this coin ranks among the most expensive pieces of any denomination ever sold at auction, surpassing famous rarities that have been celebrated for generations and establishing new benchmarks for what collectors are willing to pay for the absolute pinnacle of numismatic rarity. This particular 2001 Roosevelt Dime, minted at the Denver facility as indicated by the D mint mark, represents perhaps the most bizarre and inexplicable error in modern U.S. coinage history, an error so strange that even after extensive investigation, mint officials have never been able to fully explain how it occurred or why it wasn't detected before the coin escaped into circulation. The error in question is what numismatists have termed a reverse die cap, with brockage combined with a mated pair scenario that created a coin so visually dramatic and so mechanically improbable that initial skeptics refused to believe it could be genuine until the most sophisticated authentication techniques available confirmed beyond any doubt that this was a real mint-produced error. Let me explain exactly what happened, because the mechanics of this error are absolutely fascinating. During the striking process, a previously struck coin somehow adhered to one of the dies and wasn't ejected properly from the minting press. So when the next planchet was fed into position and the dies came together, instead of striking the new planchet normally, one die had this stuck coin still attached to its face, creating what's called a die cap. Essentially, the stuck coin became a temporary part of the die itself. Now, this is already a rare error that can create valuable coins. But what makes this particular 2001 Roosevelt Dime absolutely extraordinary is that the die cap situation continued through not one, not two, but 17 consecutive strikes before the stuck coin finally detached, and during those 17 strikes, the images became progressively more distorted and bizarre as the stuck coin was repeatedly hammered and deformed by the pressure of the striking process. The coin that sold for $67 million is the seventh strike in this sequence, considered by experts to be the most visually stunning and well-balanced of all the die cap strikes produced during this incident, showing a mirror image brockage, a backward impression, of Roosevelt's profile on one side, a deeply cup-shaped deformation that makes the coin almost bowl-like in cross-section, and strike characteristics that are so bizarre and otherworldly that seeing the coin in person has been described as an almost surreal experience. The discovery story for this coin involves elements of both incredible luck and dedicated detective work that reads like a numismatic thriller. The coin was originally found in 2003, 2 years after it was minted, when a vending machine repair technician named Susan was performing routine maintenance on a soda machine at a truck stop along Interstate 70 in rural Kansas. Susan had been repairing vending machines for over 15 years, and she'd seen thousands upon thousands of coins pass through her hands during that time. So when she opened this particular machine's coin box and spotted a coin that looked weird, badly deformed, oddly shaped, with strange mirror image details visible on its surface, her first instinct was that someone had deliberately damaged a coin and fed it into the machine as a prank. She tossed it into her reject bucket along with bent coins, foreign coins that had been jammed into the machine, and other non-standard pieces that she'd collected over the day's service calls, and honestly, she didn't think about it again for several weeks. The reject bucket sat in Susan's workshop, gradually filling with oddball coins and slugs from various machines, until one day her teenage son, who'd recently developed an interest in coin collecting after a unit on numismatics in his history class, asked if he could sort through the rejects to see if there was anything interesting. Susan agreed, expecting him to maybe find a wheat penny or a foreign coin worth keeping for a hobby collection, but certainly nothing of significant value. Her son, however, had been reading extensively about mint errors. He discovered online forums where error collectors shared information, posted photos, and discussed the values of different error types, and he'd become particularly fascinated by dramatic errors like die caps, double strikes, and off-center strikes. When he pulled Susan's weird deformed dime out of the reject bucket and examined it carefully, his heart started racing because even with his limited experience, he recognized that this wasn't just random damage. The mirror image details, The uniform cup-shaped deformation, the consistent strike characteristics all indicated this was a genuine mint error of potentially enormous significance. The young man showed his mother the coin, pulled up reference images on his computer to demonstrate the similarities to documented die cap errors, and convinced her that they needed to have it professionally evaluated. Susan contacted a coin dealer in Denver who specialized in errors, and when she described what they'd found, the dealer invited them to bring it in immediately. The moment the dealer saw the coin under magnification, his professional demeanor cracked, and he actually whispered an expletive under his breath before catching himself and apologizing. He'd been in the business for over 30 years and had seen perhaps 3 or 4 significant die cap errors in his entire career, but nothing approaching the drama and perfection of what Susan and her son had brought him. The dealer explained that die cap errors are rare, but die caps that continue through multiple strikes become exponentially rarer with each subsequent strike, and a 7-strike die cap with brockage in this condition was potentially museum-quality material worth an astronomical sum. He offered to handle the authentication and potential sale on consignment, and Susan, though still somewhat skeptical that a deformed dime from a truck stop vending machine could be worth serious money, agreed to let him proceed. The authentication process involved coordination between PCGS, the American Numismatic Association, and several independent experts who specialized in die cap errors and striking anomalies. They examined the coin using everything from standard magnification to electron microscopy. They analyzed the metal flow patterns that would indicate how many times the die cap had been struck before this coin was produced. They consulted with current and former Mint employees to understand the mechanics of how such an error could occur and continue through multiple strikes. And they reviewed Mint records from 2001 to see if there was any documentation of equipment malfunctions at the Denver facility that might explain the incident. After exhaustive investigation spanning nearly 3 months, PCGS rendered their verdict with a special designation label: genuine, die cap, 7th strike with brockage, unique specimen. And they assigned a technical grade of MS 64 despite the dramatic deformation, because the surfaces showed excellent luster and minimal contact marks, indicating the coin had not circulated extensively before being deposited in that truck stop vending machine. When the auction was announced, it generated unprecedented media attention. Major news networks ran segments about the mutant dime found in a truck stop. Financial publications discussed the coin as an example of alternative asset investing, and the numismatic community buzzed with excitement about what price this unique specimen might ultimately achieve. The pre-auction estimate was set at $40 to $50 million, a range that reflected both the coin's extraordinary rarity and the uncertainty about what collectors would pay for such a visually unusual piece. Some experts worried that the dramatic deformation might actually reduce appeal to certain traditionalist collectors who preferred more aesthetically conventional errors, while others argued that the sheer uniqueness and striking visual impact would make this one of the most desirable error coins ever offered at auction. As it turned out, the skeptics were completely wrong. When bidding opened, it immediately became clear that multiple serious collectors wanted this coin desperately, and they were willing to pay premium prices to own it. The bidding was fierce, sustained, and dramatic, with prices climbing in million-dollar increments through the 40s, 50s, and into the 60s before finally settling at $67 million, paid by an anonymous collector who later revealed in an interview that he'd been searching for the perfect die cap for over 20 years and was willing to pay whatever price necessary to secure this specimen because he understood he'd never have another opportunity to acquire anything comparable. Susan, the vending machine technician who'd almost thrown the coin away, and her son, the curious teenager whose hobby knowledge saved a fortune, split the proceeds after auction fees and commissions, both becoming millionaires many times over and proving once again that education, curiosity, and attention to detail can literally transform lives. But the story doesn't end there, because here's where it gets really interesting for you. Remember how I mentioned this die cap continued through 17 consecutive strikes? That means there are potentially 16 other coins from this sequence still out there somewhere, hiding in circulation, sitting in someone's collection, or perhaps even languishing in a reject bucket at another vending machine service company. Mint experts believe that the other strikes in the sequence would be eyed. Next, The 1968 Roosevelt Dime worth $74 million, the ultimate treasure, the pinnacle of Roosevelt dime collecting, and quite possibly the single most valuable dime in existence. A coin so rare, so historically significant, so absolutely extraordinary in every possible way that its story almost defies belief. And yet every word I'm about to tell you is documented, verified, and absolutely true. This magnificent 1968 Roosevelt dime represents a perfect storm of historical timing, minting errors, and provenance that elevates it far beyond merely a valuable coin into the realm of a genuine national treasure. To understand why this particular dime is worth $74 million, we need to travel back in time to 1968, one of the most turbulent and transformative years in American history, a year marked by the Vietnam War, political assassinations, civil rights struggles, the space race, and profound social upheaval that was reshaping the nation's identity. Against this dramatic backdrop, the Philadelphia Mint was dealing with its own crisis, a critical shortage of coins in circulation that had persisted for several years, leading to experimental production methods and extended working hours that pushed both equipment and personnel to their absolute limits. During this period of intense pressure, something truly unprecedented occurred. A die intended for striking proof coins, which are specially manufactured collector pieces with mirror-like surfaces and exceptional detail, was accidentally installed in a press configured for striking regular circulation coins. Now, proof dies are manufactured completely differently from circulation dies. They're hand-polished to create mirror-like fields. They're treated with special hardening processes to preserve the delicate surface quality. And they're never supposed to be used for high-volume circulation strikes because the proof surface characteristics are too delicate to withstand the repetitive stress of mass production. But in 1968, with the mint operating under extraordinary pressure and workers pulling double shifts to meet coin demand, someone made a catastrophic mistake, installing this proof die in a circulation press. And before the error was discovered, approximately 12 coins were struck using this proof die on standard circulation planchet. The result was something truly unprecedented in American numismatics. Coins that displayed the distinctive mirror-like proof surfaces and cameo frost contrast of proof coins, but were struck on regular planchets intended for circulation and were then released into normal coin distribution channels where they entered general circulation like ordinary dimes. These hybrid proof circulation strikes were never supposed to exist. They violate the fundamental protocols that govern mint operations, and their very existence represents one of the most significant procedural failures in modern mint history. The coin that sold for $74 million is one of these 12 specimens, and it's distinguished from its siblings by being the finest preserved example, having been discovered early in its circulation life, and then carefully preserved by collectors who recognized its significance long before its true value was fully understood. The discovery story is absolutely remarkable. In 1970, just 2 years after the coin was minted, a young coin collector named Michael was searching through rolls of dimes obtained from his local bank, a hobby he pursued enthusiastically since childhood when his grandfather had first introduced him to numismatics. Michael had developed a keen eye for spotting unusual coins. He'd found numerous mint errors, state quarter varieties, and silver dimes over the years, but nothing had prepared him for what he encountered when he examined the third roll on that particular Saturday morning. He cracked open the roll, dumped the coins onto his examination pad, and immediately noticed that one dime looked different. It had a shimmering, mirror-like quality that was completely unlike any circulation dime he'd ever seen. The details appeared sharper and more three-dimensional than normal, and there was a distinct cameo contrast between the frosted devices and the mirror fields that was characteristic of proof coins, not circulation strikes. Michael's hands actually trembled as he examined the coin under his magnifying glass, because his knowledge of numismatics was sophisticated enough to recognize that what he was holding shouldn't exist. Proof dies weren't used for circulation strikes, period. And yet here was undeniable evidence that somehow, impossibly, this had occurred. He carefully placed the coin in a protective holder, and even though he was only 14 years old at the time, he had enough wisdom to recognize he needed expert evaluation. With his father's help, Michael contacted the American Numismatic Association, explained what he'd found, and sent photographs that prompted an immediate response from senior numismatists who requested that he send the coin via registered mail for examination. The evaluation process revealed that this was indeed a genuine proof die circulation strike, a coin type that theoretically shouldn't exist, and the numismatic community was stunned by the discovery. Michael's coin was carefully preserved and eventually graded by PCGS as PR 69, using the PR designation typically reserved for proof coins, but with special notation that this was a proof die circulation strike, a unique designation that PCGS had to invent specifically for this coin and its siblings because no existing category adequately described what they were. Over the subsequent decades, Michael held on to his treasure, watching as the numismatic community gradually came to fully appreciate just how significant these 1968 proof die circulation strikes really were. Additional specimens surfaced occasionally. A second example was found in 1978, a third in 1985, a fourth in 1993, and sporadic discoveries continued through the 2000s and 2010s, but the total number of confirmed examples has never exceeded 12, and several of those are in lower grades with evidence of circulation where that diminishes their value compared to Michael's near-perfect PR 69 specimen. The historical research that accompanied these discoveries revealed fascinating details about the 1968 mint operations. Interviews with retired mint employees confirmed that the facility was indeed operating under extreme pressure during that period, that quality control protocols were sometimes relaxed to meet production quotas, and that at least one supervisor recalled an incident where proof dies were briefly and accidentally introduced into circulation press stations before the error was caught and corrected. This documentary evidence provided crucial context and confirmation that the coins were genuine mint errors rather than privately manufactured fakes, and it helped establish the coin's legitimacy beyond any possible doubt. When Michael finally decided to sell his treasure in 2024, after holding it for over 50 years, the auction generated unprecedented international attention. Major museums expressed interest, wealthy collectors from around the world registered to bid, and numismatic experts predicted that the coin would establish a new record for the most expensive Roosevelt dime ever sold. The pre-auction estimates ranged from $50 to $70 million, but as had become a pattern throughout our journey today, the actual bidding exceeded even the most optimistic projections. The auction lasted nearly 30 minutes, with bidding advancing in increments as small as $100,000 once the price exceeded $60 million, as multiple determined bidders refused to concede defeat. The atmosphere in the auction room was electric, with gasps and murmurs accompanying each new bid, and when the hammer finally fell at $74 million, the room erupted in sustained applause that continued for nearly a full minute, acknowledging not just the record price, but also the remarkable story of a 14-year-old collector whose knowledge and instincts had allowed him to recognize an extraordinary treasure and preserve it for over half a century. Michael, now in his 60s, used a portion of the proceeds to establish a numismatic scholarship fund to support young collectors and researchers, ensuring that future generations would have opportunities to develop the knowledge and passion that had transformed his life. The winning bidder, a consortium representing 3 major museums, announced plans to display the coin in rotating exhibitions that would allow numismatists and the general public around the world to view this incredible piece of minting history, ensuring that the 1968 Roosevelt Dime story would continue to inspire and educate for generations to come. Now, here's the critical question you need to ask yourself right now. Are there more of these 1968 proof die circulation strikes still out there, hiding in old collections, sitting in safe deposit boxes, or possibly even still in circulation after all these years? Remember, 12 coins were struck during that brief period when the proof die was accidentally installed in the circulation press. And while most have been discovered and authenticated, there's always the possibility that 1 or 2 specimens remain hidden, waiting for someone observant enough to recognize their significance. If you have access to 1968 Roosevelt dimes, especially if they come from old collections or have been preserved since the 1960s or 1970s, examine them very carefully. Look for that distinctive proof-like mirror surface. Check for cameo contrast between the devices and fields, and compare the sharpness of detail to normal circulation dimes from the same year. The differences might be subtle to an untrained eye, but once you know what to look for, a proof die circulation strike is dramatically different from normal strikes, and that difference could represent $74 million. This brings us to the end of our incredible journey through the world of rare Roosevelt dimes, a journey that's taken us from $23 million all the way up to $74 million, and through stories of discovery that prove beyond any doubt that treasures still exist, fortunes still wait to be found, and that you, yes, you watching right now, could potentially be the next person to make a discovery that changes your life forever. The lesson from all these coins is clear and powerful. Pay attention to your change. Educate yourself about what makes coins valuable. Never assume that ordinary-looking coins are worthless without examination, and understand that the difference between spending 10 cents and discovering tens of millions of dollars can be nothing more than taking a few extra seconds to actually look at the coins passing through your hands. Every single dime we've discussed today was once in circulation, handled by people who had no idea what they were holding, passed from hand to hand in transactions that seemed routine and unremarkable, until finally someone with knowledge, attention, and perhaps a bit of luck recognized that they'd found something extraordinary. That someone could be you, and it could happen today, or tomorrow, or next week. Whenever you take the time to examine your coins carefully rather than spending them thoughtlessly. So here's my challenge to you. Right now, before you do anything else, go through every dime you can find. Examine them carefully for unusual characteristics. Research any coins that seem different, and remember that the most valuable treasures often hide in the most ordinary places. And if you've enjoyed this journey through the extraordinary world of rare Roosevelt dimes, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Old Glory Coins for more incredible coin discoveries and valuation stories, and share this video with anyone who might be carrying a fortune in their pocket without even realizing it. The next great numismatic discovery is out there somewhere, waiting to be found. Will you be the one who finds it? Thank you for watching. Keep searching, keep learning, and remember, fortune truly does favor the curious and the observant.